Good morning, everybody. This is Martin John, and it is rolling on 7 a.m. here Central Time. And I've been working on the Dow this morning, kind of writing some notes. I love sharing what I have. I just shared my Dow with a couple people in a group that I'm in, and really happy to um, share with you my translation of the Tao as well. So I'm gonna look at number 64 today. If anybody has a number they'd like to kind of go over, I would love to have you up. Marcy is gonna come up and pick a number. Oh, that's so great. I can put my 64 aside. How's it going, Marcy?
Hi, Martin John. You know what?
Good.
I wasn't even gonna come here.
No? And here you are.
Yeah, I was getting. Don't tell him. I was getting bored with the conversation on Clubhouse, and I said, "Let me go see what's happening on Wisdom." So I'm here, and I was so surprised to see you. I actually fumbled over myself to get to actually did. I almost dropped the phone, so I could push
Oh.
the button. Yeah, I missed you.
Oh. I'm just
How
gonna
are
hold you
you?
for a moment.
Aw.
I'm doing well. Yesterday I found out that I won't be getting a job that I applied for and I was in the running for, and
Oh.
everybody at the organization like recommended that I get hired, and then the hiring manager went sort of rogue and hired the other person. So
Oh.
so that's
Well, okay then.
that's how things go. But that's probably best for me. For whatever reason, we'll figure that out over the next coming days or weeks.
Well, I will light a candle for you to find the best situation for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Of
so
course, of
much.
course.
Yeah. So, but I'm good. I'm like I have a new
Yeah.
client that starts today,
Oh, fabulous.
and I'm doing some other things. So like my day today, in an hour, I leave my house and then I come back for 20 minutes and then I leave again and then I come back for 20
Oh,
minutes and then I leave. So
okay.
it's a big sort of day out. And we're gonna enjoy that. So
I'm happy for you.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Down to business. Do you have a
Yeah.
number for me?
Um, what's the range? 1 through
1 to 81.
1 to 81. You know what? My daughter's turning 25 next week. Next week. Let's do 25.
25.
Yeah.
Wonderful. 25 is entitled I Call It Tao.
Okay.
Before the manifestation of heaven, there is void. It is still and has no form. Inexhaustible, it reaches everywhere. It is at the core of everything. Since names became important, it has been called Tao. It flows amongst manifestation without resistance, inside, outside, conscious, and subconscious. Tao is great, universes are great, planets are great, and beings are great. These four are all great and follow the law of their principle. All beings follow their planet, planets follow their universe, universes follow Tao, and Tao follows only its nature.
Hmm.
You know, as I read this, and I think about your daughter turning 25, and I think about like, when you take on sort of the identity or take on the role of mother, and you're always going to be that, but that role changes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
It
what
does.
you have to do is really kind of yield to those changes. And when we look at this as like all beings follow their planet, we look at like the orbit of a child, and the orbit of the family unit and how that kind of works. And it's like your child is going to follow like you, but it's going to do it in a way that it's going to do it, and that is going to be guided by that which is deeply flowing within.
I mean, I hope that she'd follow me,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
but
But it's all ultimately going to be her.
yeah, no, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes. I got that. I get that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wanted to add she's transgender,
Mm-hmm.
so she is following her own path,
Yeah,
and we had a really rough start when she first told me,
yeah.
and not for anything that anybody might imagine or assume.
Right, of course.
It was just communication,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's like I've noticed a shift in her, like you said.
Yeah,
And you're right, it happened. I think it happens with all of our children, with our friends, with people
yeah.
that we come across. We affect everyone, and then they sometimes people emulate us,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they take little bits and they absorb it and they think about it and then they go on their own way.
Right.
Mm,
And sometimes they emulate us, and then they realize that that's not what they wanted to do,
exactly,
and then they
exactly.
rebel against
Let's,
us
yeah.
when we never intended for them to follow us in the first place in the way that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always really, like, it's interesting as we look at the first lines of this, like, before the manifestation of heaven there is void, it is still and has no form. So before they start to kind of emulate anything, there is just, it has no form. It could do whatever it wants, but it only has so much like frame of reference when in manifestation. Inexhaustible, it reaches everywhere. It has the core, it is at the core of everything. And then there's this interesting line: since names became important, it has been called Tao. And it's this
Mm.
interesting sort of line that's like, wait a minute, everything exists before it has a name. And then at some point, it like gets smaller once you give it a name.
Huh.
It's like, oh, wait, whoa. Now it's like, now I can conceive of this thing that is so big. If we didn't have names for anything, everything would be what it is, whatever that is, without us contributing. And then, when people start
Oh, Martin
following you,
John. Oh my
go ahead.
God. You just validated me without even realizing it. And I didn't even realize you were doing it. And then just now it was like that light bulb above my head.
Yeah, tell
Um,
me.
People hate that I say I don't like labels.
Oh,
I said,
I love it.
why
I
do I
love
want a
that you say
label?
that.
Yeah, why do I? Because because of my daughter, mostly when people tell me, they find out she's trans, it's like, well, how do you identify? I always, well, in that situation, I identify as her mom.
Right.
And they go, no, no, but how do you identify? As Marcella.
Yeah.
Oh, but what are your pronouns? Why does that matter?
Right. Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
we want to make sure we're addressing you correctly. Whatever comes out, I'm sure that it's fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
not. I'm
and
not like. I'm not so. I'm not. I'm not hung up on it.
I do make it a point to correct people on my name all the time, unless you have a specific nickname for me, like
Mm-hmm.
you. Uh, unless you do, then it's Marcella, and I get people Marcella, Maricela, and I always say Marcella, Marcella, and I'll just keep saying it, Marcella,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
until they get it right. But
Yeah.
other than that, that's how I identify as me, as Marcella.
Yeah.
I don't need to validate or claim things in order to identify with anyone else or to resonate with anyone or to make anyone else more comfortable. I
That's right.
identify as me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and like for me, people call me Martin. There are a handful of people that have known me for a long time that call me Marty. There's a number of people that I know professionally that call me Martin John. And some people are like, oh well, what do you prefer? And I was like, well, I don't really have a preference. If you call me something that I don't that is not okay for you to call me, I'm gonna let you know.
Mm-hmm.
But like there's so much where it's like these are the identities that we hold, and when we kind of shrink that identity to something, like to whatever it is, and it's fine for everybody to do that, but it's like it as soon as we have an identity, like I am a mother, well, you're so much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
You could put mother on the list, but I always like to say, look, if you're ending that I am sentence with anything other than a period, there is a limitation you're giving yourself. It's like I am. And when we can really just kind of sit with that phrase I am,
That's it.
like there's
That's
this
it.
it's
Yeah.
just this the releasing of like all of the stuff that I got to hold on to in order to be something specific. And so there's this little line of like, since names became important, because they haven't always been important, it has been
Oh,
called
wow.
down. It flows amongst manifestation without resistance, because it existed before we gave it any name, like it doesn't
Right.
need, nothing needs like to have that, like them like defined by some box. I was like, it's like the universe. You cannot be contained in a box, and
No.
yet trying to end that sentence with anything other than I am, and that's it. Like I am. Like wow, what a way to just like. That's a complete sentence.
I really love that. I really, really love that. Lord, I struggle with other people. Not even a struggle. It's just hearing them try to label me, and
Yeah,
and then I have to say that to them. I don't. That doesn't resonate with me. Oh,
yeah,
well, why doesn't it resonate? But you're the yeah. And when I say
yeah.
in that instance, I'm her mother.
Right.
I am a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other things. I'll speak to people, and I feel like I'm a friend. I'm a negotiator, but all of that I do makes me who I am.
Right.
Like
And
you
that's
said,
fluid,
yeah,
constantly changing, constantly adjusting, constantly just being present to this moment.
exactly. Wow. I'm so glad I came over here today.
Me as well. I love you.
I love you too.
And my best to your daughter on her 25th.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's important. Oh my God, she just graduated. She just graduated college.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. And and she got her preferred name on her degree. So
Oh,
I'm happy for her. I'm proud of her. And it's Pride Month, so it's like this is just a big celebration for
big.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm gonna head out because we're actually going to a movie in 2 hours,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, we're gonna go see the Spider Verse.
Oh, okay. I
I'm a
heard
Spider Man
I
fan.
heard from some folks that it's pretty good.
Oh, I'm such a huge fan of his. So,
Good.
oh, I love you so much.
Mwah. We'll
Kisses and
talk
hugs for
soon.
you. Okay,
Yeah.
honey.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, 25. I call it Tao. And like it's interesting because the title of this, I call it Tao, is like is contributing to this. I am putting it in a box, right? So it's interesting here. It's like, since names became important, it has been called Tao. It's like, this is the best we could do. I call it Tao, but it's bigger than that. It's more than that, right? It's like this. It's like the title that I added to this, right? I call it Tao is like, it's not coming from a. It's not making a statement. It is Tao. It is called Tao, and don't call it anything else. It is not trying to label it. It is saying, I call it Tao. Whatever you call it. You could call it God, or you could call it the universe, or you could call it source. You can call it whatever the fuck you want to call it. You can call it potato, right? Like it doesn't really matter. But like, and that's sort of like, as I read through this and I look back at the title, I can recall that, like, oh, this is about like Don't worry about what you call it. Or whatever you call it. But I call it Tao. And then it moves on. Before the manifestation of heaven, there is void, right? Like this, the use of the word is focuses on the fact that there is no time. So we start the sentence with before. So it should be, like if we were kind of looking at English and saying, oh, this needs to be proper and it needs to be able to agree with itself in terms of time. Before the manifestation of heaven and earth, there was that void, because then there was manifestation of heaven and earth. The problem is that time isn't real, and the manifestation, like space, isn't necessarily real either. So before the manifestation of heaven, there is void, and it is still and has no form. The void is still and has no form, and it is before all of time, because now we are questioning time. We are putting time into something that is now malleable. It's not something that we normally look at, right? We usually look at time as being something that's very, linear and very, oh, this happened before this, or this is this. I mean, I talk to people all the time about, like, your past lives may be in the future. You may be having a past life right now as you're living this life. Right? There may be someone else out on the planet that is you, that is having a past life experience for you. And you are having a past life, quote unquote, experience for them. Time isn't linear. Time isn't something that we can. And so, like here, we're really kind of putting that into question. Inexhaustible, talking about Tao, the void, talking about the void. Inexhaustible, it reaches everywhere. It is at the core of everything. The void is at the core of everything. Within you is void. Within all things is void. Since names became important, it has been called Tao. And that's what brings up, like, that, all of that stuff that we talked about with Marcy, right? Since names became important. Now, it existed well before names became important, but because names are important, here we go, rolling our eyes, right? Ugh, I gotta call it something. I call it Tao. You can call it whatever the hell you want. It doesn't matter. Names are important. Okay, I'll give it a name. It's Tao. And that's it. And that's where we got our title. It flows amongst manifestation. It flows among manifestation without resistance, inside, outside, conscious, and subconscious. So Tao flows everywhere. Tao is the void. The void is Tao, and it is flowing everywhere. Within every cell of your body exists void, exists a vacuum, and in that is Tao, and in that is that consciousness that you are, so reluctant sometimes to acknowledge. Tao is great, right? That's where we start. Like, Tao is in everything. Tao is great. Universes are great. Tao is within universes. Planets are great. Oh, we find out planets are within universes, and Tao is within the planet. Beings are great. Beings are on a planet, which is in a universe, which is part of the Tao. All Tao is part of all things. The beings are keep the planet connected. The universe keeps the planets connected. And so all of these things are one, ultimately, right? Like, so you are Tao. And there's it's like you got 7 degrees of separation between you and Kevin Bateman, right? Like, so there's 4 degrees of separation, or 3 degrees of separation between you and Tao, the planet, the universe, Tao. All four, these four are all great and follow the law of their principle. Their principle, like the thing, like this is what we were talking about with Marcy, right? Like, her daughter follows her. And even though there are and there's rebellion and there's all of the things, they follow the law of their principle. All beings follow their planet, and their planet, supports family, or supports housing, or supports food, or supports whatever. It supports you, right? So the planet is where you will follow. And then the planets follow the universes follow Tao, and Tao follows only its nature. And ultimately, if you follow your nature, you will follow the planet, but your nature, because you are connected to the planet, is limited, and that's where the names come in, right? It's limited, 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 limited. Right? You can see yourself as bigger than the planet, and you are, but living within the manifestation, because you're engaged with the manifestation, that limits you. Right? And then when you create a name, I like this, don't like this, I did this, I didn't do this, da 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 da, da, all of those things, right? Like that all of a sudden limits you even further. So how beautiful, how beautiful. Thank you so much, Marcy, for picking number 25. My best to your daughter. Congratulations to her on her graduation, and I wish you all the best as you guys step into the weekend and enjoy your celebrations. Oh, Johnny is going to join me. Oh, Johnny recently got my book of quotes, and I wanted to see, was it worth it? All of the work you did.
Hello, Martin John.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, it was definitely worth it. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much for sorting that out. I've been through that book at least twice now,
Oh,
and I've actually there's a quote in there and something that you've mentioned before that's stuck with me, and that I actually have started to implement, and that is the, I'm paraphrasing now,
yeah, yeah.
forgive me. Um, it's along the lines of, do I like that I'm
Yes.
doing this
No, that's not a
versus
paraphrase. That's a quote. That's a quote. Yeah, that's good. Do I like that?
versus
I'm doing it. That's one of my favorite things. It's like kind of examining. I don't know. I know I had notes for every one of those, but like I talk about it sometimes, like like an Oreo cookie. Oreo cookie was designed to be liked, so you like an cookie. That's not going to change over a span of time. The difference is like if I eat one Oreo cookie and then I'm eating like a third or whatever, like all of a sudden I might not like that I'm eating a third and a fourth Oreo cookie. And it's like I still like Oreos, but I don't like that I'm eating it. And when we can recognize that we don't like that we're doing something, we don't have to change. We don't have to actually stop eating the cookie, but we do have to recognize that we don't like that we're doing it. And 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 eventually, and there's, I don't know if there's a quote in there that says like you're going to do it until you don't. But like that's the idea. The idea is like once you recognize that you don't like that you're doing it, then you're already on the path to not doing it.
absolutely, there's that realization and awareness.
Yeah.
And I when I first heard you talk about that quote, I put it in the context of, I made the mistake of, well, this quote really applies to people who are, potentially recovering from alcohol addiction or drug addiction or something of that nature. But it's much wider than that,
Oh my God, yeah.
as actually, as your as your example just shows. And
Right.
I just used it the other night, and I realized, at sort of the end of the day, I'll sometimes watch a bit of rubbish Netflix or something like
Hmm.
that. But I realized it's been getting a bit longer and longer each
Hmm.
evening. And I just remember, I was just thinking about it. I think, do I like doing this? I don't, sometimes I do. But do I like that I'm doing it and it's making me go to bed late and actually get up late?
Right.
Definitely not. And as soon as I realized that, I just stopped it.
Yeah.
And
It's
and,
so
and
easy.
it
There's
is
no
so
judgment.
easy.
It's no judgment. It's just like, wait, I don't like that I'm doing this. and
Exactly.
and 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 it's just so much easier than like beating yourself up in the morning that you did it. and
Yes,
and
exactly. Yeah.
and without awareness and without all this stuff. Yeah, it's good. And that's a me original, like all of those are, but like I really like that, like we've that I kind of stumbled upon that real that very kind of, I don't want to call it clever, but that distinction, that distinction of like there is a big difference between liking something and liking that you're engaging in it.
Yeah, and I also think when it's an original, when you've come up, when it's come from within you, it has so much more power.
Yeah.
There's something. No, it's got power for me, but I've sorry, my number is 72, by the way.
Okay.
Um, but I've been reading The Untethered Soul recently,
Hmm.
and it talks a lot about just being quiet and connecting to your being aware of your awareness and true meditation.
Hmm.
And and when I do that, when I get to that point, every now and again, I'll get this. It'll be super, super, super quiet, and then a statement will come up, or a question will
Yeah.
come up, or and it will be so pertinent to me, and it will be so powerful. And
Hmm.
it's not something I've read or something I've heard. It's just it comes from internal, and I think when you get those things, they're just very relevant for your journey.
Well, and I think that that's, so much of, what I read in the Tao, and so much of, I mean, even like in the few times that we've connected and talked, and we've addressed this idea that like your answer is not in some book somewhere.
Yeah.
No matter how much you want to like try and find that book, it's not there. And we are stepping on the toes of professionals by saying that, right? But they're only professionals because they published a book, or
Yeah, exactly.
and they are, biased to your coming up with your own thing because they invested so much and they have done so much to get there. And we live in a market of finance and other things, and people want to make sure that oh well, if you don't do it this way, then you're like you're speculating. And it's like, well, they were speculating.
Exactly.
Just like earlier we were talking about like Marcy came on, and we read number 25 and looked at this idea that like since names became important, and that's the thing, like once I like, sure, it's my quote, right? Like, oh, like, do you like that you're doing this? But how you arrive at it, and how like, and if you never read that, you would have come up with that eventually because it's in the ether. Why is it in the ether? I mean, maybe I got it from somewhere else, in the ether, or it was created. And so it's part of the consciousness of everybody
Yes. Yeah.
already. And it doesn't, like, we don't have to have it written down to have access to it. And we're not alone, and I always like to, and I think like when we started talking about writing with your left hand, you had looked it up, and I was like, yeah, there's no reason to look it up. You have a left hand, write with it. Like
Yeah.
it's like there is no like, but when we revert to a professional, when we revert to, and it's really interesting because your 72 is all about that. And I'm going to go
Great.
ahead and read this. And like,
Okay.
so number 72 is with nothing to teach.
Okay.
The knowledgeable, having lost their sense of awe, seek to be entertained. Losing themselves in that process, they turn to the more knowledgeable authorities. Do not make light of what is important to people, and they will respect you. Therefore, the master, although she knows herself, she is not arrogant. She loves herself as she is, but she also loves others as they are. She has nothing to teach, and the knowledgeable have nothing to learn. So, what I see this as saying, we're going to go through it in a second. What I see this as saying as it relates to what we're talking about is like we constantly look to authorities because we've lost our sense of awe. We've lost our sense of ourselves. And
Absolutely.
so and so we want to be entertained. And in order to be entertained, we have to be engaged. And so losing ourselves in the process of being entertained, we try and find some identity. And that identity is like, oh, I know something. But the only way that I can know something is by learning it through someone else,
Yeah.
because I've lost my sense of awe. So this is like this disillusion, right? Like I have dissolved myself. So the knowledgeable, so we know some shit. How good are we? Having lost their sense of awe. Oh, we're so important because we know things. So instead of approaching this moment from a clear slate, we're approaching this moment with knowledge. So we know something. How good are we? Now we're going to seek to be entertained. Let's look at the 1980s. All of the people that like really loved who they were and they knew some shit and they went out and they were making lots of money and they were doing all this stuff. And what were they doing with that money? Being entertained. You know, like there was the sex industry and there was the drug industry and there was like money and there was the stock market and all of these things, and they knew how to do it and they were selling themselves and all of these sorts of things. So they go out to be entertained. Losing themselves in that process, they turn to more knowledgeable authorities. So they lost themselves in the process of having been entertained and having like bought all of their things, and then they turn to more knowledgeable authorities. They read more books. They looked more things up. They created the internet, so there's more information out there that we can access, and there's like constantly more and more and more. Well, once we get to that point, we get exhausted just kind of thinking about how it can never end.
Absolutely.
And in that exhaustion, we have this next line, which is really, really important. Do not make light of what is important to other people, and they will respect you. The thing is we could easily look down on all of those people like that are kind of like feeding these hungry ghosts that are constantly looking for more and more information. But if you make light of the fact that they're looking for authority to guide them in their life, they're not going to even look at you, because they're going to see that their path is important and you don't respect their path. Therefore, the master, although she knows herself, she knows who she is. She's not trying to get other people to know who they are. She is not arrogant. She's not arrogant with knowing herself. She's not trying to prove that what she knows is best. She loves herself as she is, but she also loves others as they are. She has nothing to teach, and the knowledgeable have nothing to learn. And don't forget who the knowledgeable are. The knowledgeable, having lost their sense of awe, seek to be entertained.
Yeah, that's very powerful. And I had a reflection the other day that that was very pertinent to me, was that you should never trust anybody more than you trust yourself.
Yes.
And we're in a society, and even me, I've looked so much for mentors and guides throughout my journey, and I've
Mm-hmm.
had some good mentors and I've had some awful mentors.
Yeah.
And but even the good mentors, I've realized sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong.
Yeah.
and
They're
and
people.
they're people, yeah. And some and they the and trusting them implicitly. You never should trust anybody implicitly, which is again something I didn't realize for a long time. I used to put some people on pedestals.
Yes.
And,
That's what we do as a society, right? That's why we have
yeah,
famous people, and that's why everybody wants to be famous, right?
yeah,
Because I want to be put on a pedestal. I'm special. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. No, that was great. Thank you, Martin John. That was that really did hit it, because it's really resonating with where sort of I am in that sort of. It's actually harder to do the inner work than it is to actually go out and get somebody to spoon feed you the answers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
Yeah,
that
and that's the thing. Like what they're spoon feeding you isn't
it
your
isn't the answer.
answer. It is
Yeah,
just an
exactly.
answer. It's an answer that was good for someone. And You know, it's interesting. Like when we look at this, the knowledgeable, having lost their sense of awe, seek to be entertained. So they want to entertain themselves, and they usually entertain themselves with proving how knowledgeable they are.
Yes.
Losing themselves in that process, they turn to the more knowledgeable authorities. And that's the thing. Like now, this is all knowledgeable. It's all the knowledgeable. Oh, you're so smart. You know, I'm going to turn to Jordan Peterson because he's more knowledgeable than I am, or whatever, right? Like I'm going to turn to all of these people that are famous or out in the world and writing books and doing all these things. But it's also empty.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you are not empty.
If you realize that, if one
Right.
realizes that.
Right. Right. And
I,
feel like if you're not done kind of talking about this, come back up. But if you are,
yeah.
we can wrap it up. So yeah, Johnny's gonna come back up. Good. Yeah, this is such a powerful. Like when we start breaking it down, it really gets powerful because it could seem, like when we read through it that it doesn't really all kind of jive because it's hard to process like all of these words. That's what's interesting about ancient text in the Tao. Like it's covering so much, but you have to put the work in.
Yes, exactly. And that is the key. People say you have to do the work,
Yeah.
but that, to me, that's always been my sort of that's kind of been one of the big questions for me, is like, what is the work?
Right.
And the work to me is evolving. The work's always, it changes. It's not one. At one point I used to think the work was doing in a child work and shadow work, and
Oh,
maybe
right.
that, and maybe that is a component of it, but that's just it. It's just one component, and the work is so broad and it's different for everybody. And um it's I just find it very funny that every time I go onto Instagram now, there seems to be an advert for a life coach.
Yeah.
It's just that our life coaches everywhere these days, and
Yeah.
it's
Swing a dead cat, son.
yeah, exactly. I also wanted to comment on. I know you've got a busy day coming up, so I just wanted to comment
No, 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 no. Go
uh,
on.
on it. I just wanted to acknowledge that I felt for you when you said that. I know you recently, I think it was that you applied for a role for a director
Director
of
of
education,
education. Yeah, yeah,
and it sounded like some nepotism had creeped into the recruitment process, and that there was somewhat of a. I really felt for you because
yeah.
I've been on the receiving end of that before, and but then I also thought, you're probably the most adult and responsible person, or one of the most adult and responsible people I know. And so if anybody can um if anybody can come to terms and manage this situation and flow with it, it's you.
So it's funny, like that you should mention that, and I'm going to give you a little glimpse into how I do that sort of work. Um, so I always look at the experiences that I have, and of course, I could be a victim of the nepotism,
Yeah.
but as you know, I won't do that.
Yeah.
but what I do is I recognize what I experienced. Okay, so I was like, well, what did I experience? Well, one, as soon as I found out he had a friend in the running and it was only me and his friend, and that I found out that he only interviewed me and his friend, and the only reason that he interviewed me probably was because I was brought up by people by his staff.
Hmm.
Um, I really kind of knew at that point that I didn't have a chance. And it was through one of the people that brought me up and said you should check him out. Like it was through them and their like thing going, like, we need you in there, right? Like, this is like you, so please follow up. And I wasn't going to follow up a second time, and I did, and I got the second interview, all of this. But I allowed myself to feel comfortable with the idea that that was out there, even though I knew that it was probably not going to happen, because the person that I had interviewed with, the hiring manager, wasn't really as mature as
Yes.
somebody who, right. And then I was upset yesterday when I found out all of these things. And I said, "Well, what am I upset about?" You know? And I said, "Well, I'm upset that, like, for all of these reasons, right? I talked about teamwork with me, and he's not part of the team. But it's like, well, what is he doing? Like, why is he doing it? He's trying to avoid letting other people know that he is going to do what he wants anyway, right? It's like he's asking people to make pros and cons list, and everything keeps coming up, me, 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 me. And all of a sudden, and he's not even talking to his staff about who he's hiring, and nobody knows that he's hired anybody. And yet someone overheard him say that this woman is starting on, like, the 5th of July or something like that. And so I was, and so that's how it got back to me. It wasn't because he has made an announcement, right? And so I say, well, why is he doing that? Well, he's doing that because he is purposefully going rogue, and and he's doing this with, an attractive woman that lives in his neighborhood. And I was like, okay, well, what does this say about me, this experience? So this experience, if I look at the Tao, is the child of my creation, right? This is what I created to experience. Now, when I
Yeah.
look at that, I go, okay, well, where am I manipulating, or, telling half truths, or avoiding? And I can see areas in my life where I'm doing that, just because I'm afraid that if I'm honest, I won't get what I want. But I look at his situation and I said, if he were honest and hired me, he would get something better than he's going to get. And I say, maybe I need to get more honest. Maybe I need to be more forthright in what I'm, because there are times we tell half truths.
Yes, absolutely.
And when we do that, and we do that maybe, and I do that sometimes because I'm like, oh, I don't want them to know what I want, because if I tell them what I want, I'm not going to get it. And this stems to me as a child, because I was always afraid that things were going to get taken from me. Like, if I wanted something, that was something. Because when I was like 7 or 8, all of my toys got taken from me because I did poorly in school. You know,
Okay.
and so like there are things like that I experienced, where it's like, when you're honest, things are going to get taken from you. And so I have this fear. And so this experience exposed that for me, because I got to think about, well, in my experience, what is happening? I'm not a victim. What am I experiencing? What are the things that I'm experiencing? This person hiding his intentions so that they don't, so nobody can take them from him.
Hmm.
So
And
nobody
nobody can
can
challenge him. Yeah.
nobody can challenge him. And I recognize there are places in my life I do that. And so every time we have an experience, especially one that we don't necessarily like, we have to be able to turn that on ourselves and figure out, what experience is it that I'm having, not what happened, right? Especially as a victim. But what is it? What is the experience that I'm having? And I'm having the experience that he is doing this. Now, whether or not that's actually what he's doing is irrelevant. What actually happened doesn't matter. What I'm experiencing matters. So I don't have to do any research. I just have to go into my mind and say, what do I believe is happening? And when I see what I believe is happening, and I say, where do I do that? I can find it. And every
Yeah.
time I can become a little more honest and become a little bit more myself. And then I can recognize that I don't like that I do that. And when I recognize I don't like that, I manipulate because I don't like that he manipulated.
Yeah. It,
Oh, now this is where I am. This is where I'm creating it. This is why he isn't a separate person. This is why he is just a reflection of me.
and that's what it sounded like. It sounded like that you were using this experience as a mirror
Hmm.
to look back on your own beliefs and how you may have manifested
Hmm.
this scenario.
Well, yeah, we
And
manifest everything,
yeah, and
right?
this and all and how that may have had some of its roots in that experience as an 8-year-old child
Right,
who had all of his toys taken away, and the you know the belief systems that was set up at that point,
right,
and how sort of one needs to be able to challenge that those beliefs are no longer either valid or helpful
right.
in where you are now. And that's, for me, that's where I would try some inner child work or shadow work, but obviously you actually have your own tools for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a really interesting way of looking at it, to that using every experience as an opportunity for growth, and learning and reflection.
And
uh,
that's one of the big messages in the Tao Te Ching. That comes up time and time again. It's just like, hey, you have to check, like, what is the mother of this experience? The mother of this experience is the thought patterns that have manifested this experience. In order to see that, you have to look at this experience, break it down to how you see it, and then kind of recognize that how you see it isn't true. It is just your perception. Because who knows? Maybe he's got great evidence as to why this woman is a better fit. And maybe my information isn't right or whatever, like however that kind of plays out. All of that stuff is just me kind of like trusting trusting what I'm experiencing. But what I'm experiencing is tainted by perception.
yeah, because you can never truly know what he's thinking. You can never.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's all, and even if you checked it out with him, you
Right.
probably wouldn't
Absolutely.
actually get an
Like
honest
I can't.
answer anyway.
Yeah. So all of this is just an illusion
Yeah.
for us to see ourselves. We can't, like, there's one time I was watching an episode of Columbo or something, and they were trying to figure out a magic trick. And the kid that was helping Columbo out said, you gotta first know it's a trick, and don't forget it's a trick. And that's how I kind of feel about reality. It's like, know it's an illusion, don't forget it's an illusion. Don't forget that you're creating this, that you are not in this life having some objective experience. It's all subjective and you're creating it. So if that's the case, how did you create this?
Yeah, it
And
is
then,
subjective, and
yeah,
I think the important, well, what I've started to realize is, very importantly for me personally, is that my subjective experience has nothing to do with somebody else's subjective experience.
even if
And
you're having what appears to be the same experience.
exactly.
Right.
And it's not that they can be just a little bit off, but they can be miles apart.
That's right.
And
And
it's I find that, yes, I
yeah,
find that so surprising at times.
yeah. And we have to keep that in mind. Like, remember it's an illusion, and don't forget it's an illusion.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you can look at every situation and not be a victim of it, be the creator of it. Even if it sucks, or even if it sucks now, because it might not suck next. It's like it's that old story of like, we'll see. Like, oh, like
Yes. Yeah.
my horse ran away. Oh, that's horrible. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Oh, my horse came back with another horse. Isn't that great? Well, we'll see. Oh, my son got fucking like kicked in the head by a horse. Well, that sucks, doesn't it? Well, we'll see. Oh, the
Yeah.
army wants to come and collect all the boys, but my son can't go. That's great, isn't it? Well, we'll see. And you
Yeah.
just kind of go down the path and you just say, well, we'll see.
Well, that see will work. Oh no, sorry, that we'll see. I think is a good way to flow, as long as you don't try and force it.
Right.
It's when sort of the horse runs away, you try chasing after it to get it back.
Right.
That it's when you just go, you do your best, and then you just let and you let what happens,
That's right.
and don't force it. Oh, it's been.
Oh, it's always great talking with you as well. I am not going to let anybody else up just because I do have to get a move on, but I appreciate you coming back up and chatting with me. Yeah, we'll see. Like I can look at this as like, oh, that really sucks that this guy did that, and I did say that yesterday, but I'm over it now. I'm over it and I'm looking on to the next thing and I'm just like, well, we'll see what happens. Like there was some time yesterday that I was like, oh, it just sucks. Ugh, but that's okay. And then, this morning I woke up and I processed in my journaling, like, oh, well, what actually happened? And so it was great to be able to share with you guys how I process things like that. So hopefully you can gain some insight on that. Once again, thank you, Johnny. Johnny was talking earlier, if you were listening, about a book of quotes that I have. In that book of quotes, I have one of my quotes, which states, do you like that you're doing this? And that's a really good question to be asking yourself. Do I like, even like, do I like that I am, a victim of this guy's nepotism or whatever, however I express it? And it's like, no, I don't like that I'm a victim of that. So move on, move up, move on. And that's it. It's pretty simple. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me for Dow of the Day. This is Martin John. If you like and benefit from the work that I do, you can check out my website. You can pick up my book of quotes, so you can set up a time to talk, or you can send a tip over to me at Venmo at @MartinJohn_Garcia. Until next time, keep recovering yourself.